serving as a direct upgrade to the original Sylph type from the days of Medarot 2 and a Master of the Wind itself. It is SLF01 Wind Sylph, with a kit of Panic, Suction, Hyper Tornado, Light Legs, and the leg ability of Continuous P, which passively boosts your heat stat every turn, stacking 5 times. Now, Sylphs in particular are something we as Medarotters are most certainly no stranger to. In fact, the original Sylph type was part of a set of 4 simply known as the Elementals, which more or less anyone who's played the original Medarot 2 core on the GBA will know particularly well for her mastery in interruption-based mechanics. In Medarot S, given Slip, Defense Seal, and Evade Seal, pretty much lived up to that very same expectation. Wind Sylph, on the other hand, takes that to a whole new level and actually gives herself a true mastery in that of her motif, the Sylph as the Master of the Wind. Panic on the head part is a shooting-based ailment skill that can serve one of 2 different purposes depending on where you attack your target and when. If you attack your target in their heat phase, as in they are facing you, Panic will act as Slip, which basically forces them to turn around and begin their cooldown phase right where you catch them, which can be very good for stalling more dangerous enemies if you're able to outrun them and buy yourself just a couple extra seconds of time. If you catch them on their cooldown phase, on the other hand, it instead will behave like Metaforce Seal, which also can be particularly messy in the fact that it not only will bar them from being unable to use Metaforce, but if the target in question is a Meta Change type bot, it will also bar them from being able to use their Meta Change form or any of their skills while transformed, giving you an edge to make sure that if there's something you don't want them to do, well, guess what? They're not going to do it until they can remove that seal first. Right Arm of Suction is a shooting-based skill that has a mastery in crowd control. In contrast to Blow Away, which is a melee-based skill, Suction instead, upon attacking the target, will, as its name implies, pull the target closer to Wind Sylph, instead allowing her to either stall the enemy's cooldown phase by essentially having them start it over again, or if you are poorly timing it, it could also instead accelerate the enemy's heat phase if you catch them just barely on the tail end starting their heat phase, or if you catch them at the very end at any point of their heat phase, it will instantly accelerate it and guarantee them that next turn. So with that said, it is a little bit recommended to have some caution and learn a little bit of juggling if you do plan to use that skill conventionally for what it offers. But in the right hands, break some legs, keep them in their cooldown phase, and you can guarantee they most certainly will not be taking another turn unless you dictate it. Left Arm of Hyper Tornado is basically just a much stronger version of the basic tornado attack, but with higher base power and of course pierce damage on top of that for a more aggressive spin. Of course, the drawback to that higher power and damage is the fact that it will also force you into a no dodge and a no defend penalty while in cooldown. So just a little bit of caution is encouraged if you plan to use that. However, the really big selling ticket to Hyper Tornado is the fact that upon attacking the target successfully, it will whisk them up into the air in a powerful cyclone, which will also grant them an anti-air weakness as long as they remain sucked in the air. Now, as a forewarning though, compared to Thunder or Freeze or anything of the like, Tornado and Hyper Tornado have the lowest duration of any of the paralyzed ailments. So you want to make sure that you move particularly quickly if you plan to smack them with a Tornado, Hyper Tornado, and an anti-air combo if you want to make use of the absolute devastation you can cause on the team with just those 2 parts alone. The Continuous P leg ability is also really nice too, as it means that her already impressive base speed at almost 1100 will be going progressively faster with every turn that passes up to the first 5, as it will passively boost her heat stat by a fixed amount for that first 5 turns and make it more likely she is going to outrun her target, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. On the topic of stats, however, she is actually pretty well rounded across the board. In contrast to Wind Cecil, who tends to stay on the much more fragile end when it comes to flight-based legs and flyers in general, Wind Sylph is kind of squishy, but she also makes up for it in the right categories that you can use her moderately well without any real support. In part, when it comes to armor, she's packing about 3479 for the head, about 3300 per arm, and legs at about 3540, almost 50 there, is actually some pretty well-rounded armor, so she can most certainly take a hit moderately well without it breaking anything. Her resist stats, though, at 612 for melee resist and shoot resist at 875, they're definitely not great, but they could be much worse. And compared to most other flyers, she's actually just a little tankier than most others tend to sit at, which is usually between the 2 and even 3 or 400s at best, with the exception of one particular stat. This, of course, is to trade off for having a very high base speed at almost 1100, like I said, and a high base evade at almost 1800. So, this means that under the right conditions, Sylph will be having a much easier time dodging or grazing a lot of stuff more than she is trying to tank blows, which is kind of to be expected for flyers or sea-based Medarots that specialize in that naturally high base evade. All this being said, though, as a pure set score, I honestly have to rate her a pretty well-rounded 7.5 out of 10. She's got good speed, she's got pretty solid armor, good base power, heat cool stats. Her resist stats are still really squishy, but definitely better than what most flyers tend to sit at, so she does kind of cover for herself moderately well. And between Panic, Suction, and Hyper Tornado, she's got 4 different ailments or abilities that she could make use of at any given time just about, especially if you want to specialize in, say, preventing or potential turn skipping, in negating Metaforce nukes, in terms of crowd control, or even setting someone up for an anti-air weakness. And the continuous P-leg ability, like I said, is just icing on the cake to guarantee that not only will this Master of the Wind be fast, but she's going faster. As mixed parts, I do have to rate her just a little bit higher at an 8 out of 10 for these same reasons. Even though her kit can synergize moderately well with itself as a Master of Wind, a lot of her parts are really going to benefit from when you decide to spread them across the team. Hyper Tornado and then pairing it off with an anti-air skill, it's kind of obvious there, so I really don't need to go into explanation there. Panic and Suction are probably going to be the 2 skills you're going to be juggling between the most, because those 2 actually require a little bit of juggling and timing depending on what kind of result you want from that particular skill, either by stalling a cooldown, or by slip, or by Metaphor Seal. Some caution is advised if you plan to use them. Legs, though, like I mentioned, have some very solid stats all around, so even for having some very low resist stats, having that high base mobility and evade, again, par for the course with a flight leg, already makes it a very well-desired part as well, in addition to Hyper Tornado. Just a word of advice, though. Reminder that she is a flyer, so she is also weak to anti-air weaknesses herself, so a little caution is advised if you do plan to use her on the team for any particular reason.